I'll be your pharaoh soon. Bring forth thy heaven new. Things will be.
Hi, I'm PJ Marks, owner of the Wakeboard Camp. I opened the camp in 1996 with the sole purpose of creating the best place in the world to teach people how to wakeboard better. Since then, we've spent thousands of hours teaching students of all ages and abilities. Our basic philosophy has always been that no matter what trick you're doing, the same basic skills and physics apply. As a result of this philosophy, we've broken tricks down into their most basic parts and developed exercises to simplify the learning process. At first, many of these exercises seem like they would be for beginners only, but if you take the time and examine them, you realize that they can and should be used by every rider regardless of age and ability. This series will teach you just about everything you could ever want to know about the sport of wakeboarding, from choosing your equipment, to driving the boat, to basic skills, all the way through executing the most advanced tricks. For years, people have been asking us to put all this stuff down on tape. Well, we finally feel like we know enough about the sport to write the book on wakeboarding instruction. So here it is, the book, Instructional DVD Series.
Hi, I'm Mike Mclin. I'm the visual effects director for the book Instructional Series. I handle pretty much all the technical stuff. I'm here to show you some of the different abbreviations that we're going to be using in this DVD and throughout the book Instructional Series. As you can see here, this is a list of some of the more common abbreviations that we'll be using. You have HS for heel side, TS toe side, FS for front side, BS for back side, SW for switch stance, and OA for off axis.
Hi, I'm Kyle Schmidt, head coach here at the Wakeboard Camp and instructional editor for Wakeboarding Magazine. This DVD is designed to give newcomers all the information they need so they can get started into wakeboarding easily, but also give seasoned riders more info so they can ride better and understand how everything works on the water. Knowing this is a big part of progression. It helps you ride better and even choose the ideal setup for your situation. Start with the equipment section and then go through boat driving, boat safety, and then move on to getting ready to ride. Pay close attention to the safety section and always remember to wear a flotation device while you're out wakeboarding. To finish up this DVD, we'll get you up and riding on your board and then start into the basics of riding behind the boat. So sit back and relax as we take you through getting started of the book Wakeboard Instructional Series. Choosing the right equipment for your riding situation can be difficult since there's such a wide variety out there today. In this section, we'll cover all the bases and hopefully make these choices easier. Remember, these are just guidelines to help you understand how everything works on the water, so try before you buy and find the right setup that works for your riding situation. Wakeboarding comes from surfing, and surfing is the roots of all board sports. Surfers stand sideways on boards and get pushed by waves. These same surfers started riding behind boats when the waves were small, and these boats were pulling them with ropes. Wakeboarding today is a more trick-oriented style of riding. But if you look closely, you can still see the roots of surfing as someone carves back and forth behind the boat. The boards started as typical surfboards made for riding waves. They were hand-shaped fiberglass boards with foam cores and big fins, but they couldn't handle the abuse of riding fast across the water and doing airs across the wakes. As wakeboarding grew in popularity, the board designs changed to accommodate a more aggressive style of riding and to take the abuse of riding fast across the water. This is a roto-molded board with foot straps to help you keep the board attached to your feet when you're in the air. It's a skinnier board with a bigger fin, which helps you cut through the water. After the first roto-molded wakeboards came the first compression-molded wakeboards. These boards were still asymmetric in design, but had many added features. The boards were thinner and had a sharper edge, a harder surface, still big fins, but you can start to see the bottom features evolve into the boards. As the sport grew even more and the skate and snowboard influence became more apparent, the boards became available as twin tips. This is still an asymmetric design, but it's designed more for riding in both directions, both switch and regular. As you can see, there's two fins, one in the front, one in the back, and the binding inserts are more centered on the board. Soon after the twin tip hit the market, the first symmetrical boards hit the market. These boards are exactly the same, tip to tail, and the binding inserts are centered exactly in the middle for a more switch stance style of riding. As symmetrical boards became the standard in the wakeboard industry, the boards started getting wider through the middle and the tips and tails to accommodate the bigger wakes. Next came the first twin-tip, multi-fin setups. These boards were designed for a more aggressive style of riding and have multiple fins on each side of the board. The tip shapes started getting more aggressive as well. As you can see, this is one of the first bat tails designed for the industry. With today's technology, wakeboards are being made with different top and bottom materials, and the molds are accommodating molded-in fins. These are fins that are built into the board and designed to take the abuse of rails and ramps. As well as molded-in fins, you have a removable fin that allows you to tune how your board rides across the water. Current wakeboards accommodate all those features, as well as some new features. Variable edges are a popular feature that allow you to find the board that's customized to your style of riding. Fin designs have changed from just the standard straight fin to many different fin designs to help you tune your board however you want. The tops of the boards are gaining features as well to add strength and style. So as you can see, wakeboards have come a long way. When it comes to choosing the right size board for you, you can check the manufacturer's size to weight ratios. But sometimes it's not as easy as just matching up your weight to the different length board recommended by the manufacturer. As your height increases, the length of the board should increase as well. This is to accommodate longer legs and a wider stance and make you stable side to side. If a tall person rides a short board, they'll have a narrow stance and it's pretty easy for them to tip over. On the other hand, if your weight increases, the length of the board should increase as well. This is to accommodate the extra weight pushing down on the board. If you're heavy and riding a shorter board, the board won't plane as well. As you make your way into a shop to choose a board, you may see different tip designs. This may become very confusing when choosing a wakeboard for yourself. Let's go through and explain exactly what these different tip designs do. The first tip I'd like to go over is the round tip. It's on one side of the spectrum and is also known as a fun shape. Its round tip is a catch-free tip and encourages a slow, smooth style of riding. Since the tips are round and wide, it doesn't allow the board to roll over onto edge as easily, and this may be great for beginners. As well as having a slower transition from edge to edge, the tip of the board doesn't have anything to catch on the wake, so your pop will be nice and clean. From the round tip, we move to the diamond tip. This tip is pretty forgiving, but it moves towards a more aggressive style of riding. Since the tip gets narrower, it allows the board to sit a little lower in the water and increases the speed of your turns. If you like a more forgiving tip, but you want your board to turn a little faster, this tip might work for you. The next tip is a square tip. This tip tends to be narrower, letting the board sit deeper in the water and allows the rider to turn faster and more aggressive. But since the corners are pointed, the tip of the board tends to catch on the wake as the rider edges or pops through the wake. It's right in the middle of the spectrum, and the board is headed in the direction of becoming a more unforgiving shape. From the square tip, we move to the bat tail. As the corners of the board become more pointed, the tip of the board acts more like a fork and grabs the water. These boards tend to turn faster and edge more aggressively, depending on the size of your fins. There are many different variations of the bat tail, and as the bat tail becomes more extreme, the board will turn faster and it will edge more aggressively, again depending on the size of your fins. These boards are aimed more at the advanced rider and can be kind of unforgiving for the beginner rider. If you're into edging aggressively and going really big, this is the tip for you, but count on getting a little spray from the wake from the corners of the board as you edge through it. On the other side of the spectrum, you have bat tails with added features. Again, these features will make the board edge even more aggressively, but can be considered hang-ups for beginner riders. Next, let's talk about rocker. Rocker is the key point in deciding the speed and the pop of a board. There are two main types of rocker, continuous and three-stage. The first one we're going to talk about is continuous. It's a smooth bend in the board from tip to tail. These boards tend to move fast across the water and have a smoother pop at the wake. But as you bend the board more, you increase the pop, but you also slow the board down since the board is pushing more water. A continuous board with the same amount of rocker as a three-stage board tends to feel faster but doesn't pop as hard as the 3-stage board. A continuous board with little rocker tend to be more ideal for smaller and mellower wakes. As you bend the board more, they're aimed more for the bigger wake and a smoother, cleaner pop. The other kind of rocker is 3-stage rocker. These boards have 2 distinct bends and a flat spot in the middle. These boards tend to have a more abrupt pop at the wake, but since there's a distinct bend, the board acts more like a plow and pushes more water, making it feel slower. So the trade-off is the board feels more slow, but does pop harder. A 3-stage board with the same amount of rocker as a continuous board will feel slower, but pop harder as you edge through the wake. Again, as you bend the board more, you increase the pop, but decrease the speed. These boards are geared more towards steeper wakes and a more poppy, spinny style of riding. The edge of your board is the outer perimeter of the board on the bottom side that rides across the water. There are different edge shapes to accommodate different styles of riding, and these edge shapes determine the speed and the forgiveness of the board. The most common is a sharp edge. This edge causes the board to ride high in the water and keeps the speed of the board fast. But when you're sliding sideways, the sharp edge may catch on the water and create harder falls. This is yet another variable that determines how the board feels when riding across the water. On the other side of things, you have a round edge. This is the most forgiving edge on the market, and when you're sliding sideways, you don't have a sharp edge to catch on the water, so it allows you to escape falls, and if you do catch your edge, the fall isn't as hard. The round edge makes the board sit a little lower in the water and does give it a little bit of a slower feel, but it is a more forgiving edge and may be more ideal for beginner riders. Compared to the sharp edge, this board will turn and transition from edge to edge a little bit slower than a sharper edge, but may feel a little bit more stable. Next we have the cupped rail. This type of rail is the sharpest and most unforgiving rail, but it's the most aggressive rail on a wakeboard. The rail of the board is very sharp and actually grabs water, much like a fin would grab the water. When it comes to choosing a board, the top and bottom material may help in deciding. The first material we're going to talk about is Nexus. This is probably the strongest of the materials, but has a duller finish. Besides Nexus, you have PBT. This material really gives your graphics a good shine and the board a good finish, but it's not quite as strong or stiff as Nexus. You also have materials like PTEX or urethane, which allows the board to take the abuse of grinding rails and hitting ramps. On the inside of the board, you have different core types. The first and most common core type is the foam core. This is the most durable and cost-efficient core, but the heaviest of the bunch. Next we have the wood core or the balsa core. These boards cannot take the abuse that a foam core can take, but are noticeably lighter. You may also see honeycomb boards. Honeycomb boards are made up of an aluminum-based honeycomb core and are really light because each cell is hollow, decreasing the amount of material needed to fill the core, but you sacrifice strength for a light feel on your feet. There are many different fin setups that are incorporated into board designs. You have your standard single fin all the way through to multi-fin boards, and even molded in fins. There are many different fins to choose from, and each fin has a different feel and purpose out on the water. The main parts of a fin are the leading edge, the trailing edge, the foil of the fin, which is how wide the fin is and determines how much drag the fin creates, and then the height determines how well the fin will track in the water. This fin shape is called a surf dog fin. It resembles a surfboard fin and is designed for a more aggressive style of riding. Again, the taller the fin gets, the better it will hold and track in the water. If the leading edge and the foil of the fin is really narrow, it decreases the drag on the fin and it allows the fin to do its job but keeps the board feeling fast through the water. The next variation is a variation that's similar to the surf dog fin, but the trailing edge is pulled out to make the base longer. The same rule applies. The taller the fin gets, the better it will track through the water. Typically, you want the leading edge of the fin to be as narrow as possible. If it's wide, then the water will blow out in front of the fin and the fin won't track as well. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the ramp style fin. This is the most forgiving design because of its round characteristic. The trailing edge is pulled out very far, making the base very long and creating a round look. Along with the three types I've just discussed, you also have long base fins. These fins are typically shorter, but the base of the fin is stretched out. This keeps the surface area about the same as a short-based, taller fin, but when you're riding flat in the water, it's easier to break these fins loose. After you make your turn and set your edge, these fins hook up but release better at the wake. They can also handle the abuse of rails and ramps since they have a long base and are shorter in height. They won't bend over as easily. Many of the multi-fin setups have side fins that are specific to certain spots on the board. They cannot be placed in the center of the fin setup, and they are usually designed as right and left fins. When it comes to fastening the fin to the board, there's different hardware setups. The most common are fins with holes and screws and bolts that attach the fin to the board. You may see posts that are built into the fin and T-nuts that are used to fasten the fin to the board. You also see different materials used to give the fin different strength and style characteristics. Here we have a colored fiberglass fin, as well as your typical one-colored fiberglass fin. And then we have a metal fin that's built for strength. Fiberglass fins tend to be lighter in weight, but aren't as strong as metal fins. Metal fins can be heavy, but can handle the abuse of rails and ramps. The most standard fin setup is a single fin board. These are boards that have the fin mounted in the center of the board and have one fin on each tip and tail. Multi-fin boards are becoming more popular in the sport today because of the increasing popularity of rails and ramps. Quad fin boards are designed to free up the middle of the board so you can lock into 50-50 grinds and nose and tail presses. You may also see quad fin setups with a removable middle fin, so you can ride the board with many different fin setups. Some boards have fin setups that incorporate the fins into the board, and these are called molded fins. These fins can really handle the abuse of rails and ramps, but once you damage the fin, you can't replace the fin, you have to replace the entire board. You also see boards with more than 2 fins on each side of the board to allow you to ride the board in many different fin configurations and tune it in many different ways. This will give it a tighter or looser feel, and you can ride it with just the outside fins, just the middle fin, or all 3. Once you decide on a board and fin setup, it's time to choose your bindings. The most important part of choosing bindings is finding the binding that has a secure fit and matches up with your foot size. This is important so you ride safe and comfortable out on the water. There are many different variations of bindings, from low end all the way up to high end. Here we have a fixed boot, and this boot has limited adjustability, but offers great support around the ankle. On boots like this, you can usually adjust the size tighter, but not bigger. And these boots tend to be harder to get in and out of, and they're usually designed for just one rider and just a couple different foot sizes. You'll see different variations of the fixed binding that have straps in different places to allow you to adjust the hold on your foot. Again, these bindings are designed for one specific rider, a couple different foot sizes, and may not be ideal if you're sharing bindings with another person. There are also lace-up bindings on the market. These bindings are designed so you can loosen up the binding to get in and out, but pull the laces tight to give yourself a secure hold down. You have front and rear lace-up bindings, and combinations of both. These bindings can also incorporate straps to adjust different pressure points on your foot. Lace-up bindings are becoming more popular in wakeboarding because it's easy to get in and out of the binding, and you can incorporate more foot sizes into one binding due to the adjustability of the laces. One good thing to know about bindings: if you're a size 10, it's easy to make that size 10 tighter, but it's harder to make it bigger. If you fall in between sizes where the footbed might be too short, but the binding tightness feels comfortable, you may want to go up a size to match up the footbed and then customize your toe piece. It's important to match up the footbed length to your foot length so the arch support lines up with your foot. If you get a pair of binding where the footbeds are too long or too short, and the features of the footbed don't match up with the bottom of your foot, the binding can become uncomfortable and even cause injury. When you buy a set of new bindings, they should break in and stretch after some time out in the sun. So make sure you size the binding snug in the store, so after the break-in period, it will fit perfect. Most wakeboard bindings are designed with different materials to give the binding different strength and support characteristics. You will find high and low wraps to choose how much support you want around your ankle and leg. It's probably a better idea for beginner riders to use bindings with stretchier materials and lower wraps. This will allow them to get in and out easily since they'll be taking more falls, and they won't be wasting their wakeboarding energy fighting with their bindings to get in and out. You'll even see multi-fit boots out on the market. These boots are designed for multiple foot sizes and ideal if you're sharing a board with many people. They incorporate toe pieces made of stretchy materials or even split toes that open up to accommodate many different foot sizes and lengths. These bindings tend to be cheaper in price and can be found on package boards to help people get into a setup at a reasonable price. As you get to the high-end side of bindings, you'll notice that the binding has better hold down, better support, and many different added features. This will help you adjust the tightness on different parts of your foot. These bindings have a more form-fit feel and are just more comfortable overall, but they are designed more for one specific foot size. After you buy a set of new bindings, try soaking the bindings in hot water for a couple minutes, and then stick your feet in to help mold the EVA rubber to your foot and foot features. This often gives the binding a more comfortable feel and molds the footbed features to the bottom of your foot. Be careful not to burn your feet. Even though you see all these features to help you get in and out of your bindings, most bindings still require the use of binding lubrication or soap to help you slide your foot in. You'll even notice that when you try them on in the shop employees may have soap handy to help you get in and out of the bindings even though you're not out on the water. Most shops have demo programs, and the money you put towards your demos can even be put towards your purchases. This is the best route to take because you can try a bunch of different bindings and then finally decide which ones work best for you. Try as many bindings as possible so you understand how bindings work and can find the binding that works best for your situation. When it comes to actually attaching the binding to your board, you'll see many different plate designs. Here we have a metal plate with holes and slots so you can adjust the stance angle as well as the stance width. You also see plastic plates with metal inserts fastened to the plastic to decrease heel lift and stiffen up the plate. Most of these plate designs use screws and plastic hardware to attach the toe and heel pieces and overlays to the binding plate. You'll see the same holes and slots so you can again adjust the stance angle and stance width. As you move to the higher end side of bindings, you'll see stronger plastic plates with the metal inserts actually molded into the plastic. On the bottom side of the plate, you may see features like gel packs or heel cushions to decrease heel bruising on those hard impacts and hard landings. On the higher end side of binding plates, you have designs that allow you to attach the binding to the board and actually adjust the stance angle while the binding is still attached to the board. You can do this by just loosening up the hardware, and these are cool because you don't have to actually take the binding off the board to adjust the stance angle. On mid to lower level binding plates, you actually have to remove the hardware from the board, move the hardware from one set of holes and slots to another, and then actually attach the binding back to the board. On these, you will also see holes and slots that allow you to adjust the stance width, as well as exact degrees that allow you to find your exact stance angle. When it comes to attaching the binding plate to the board, you'll see low-end hardware like thumb screws that doesn't require the use of tools but doesn't really offer your binding plate much support. On the other hand, you'll see high-end hardware that gives your binding plate really good support but requires the use of a screwdriver or Allen key to tighten up your binding to the board. You may also see binding plate stiffeners. These are a wide set of hardware that are used to give the binding plate really good support and decrease heel lift. Remember, if you're one of those people that falls in between foot sizes, match up the footbed length with your foot length and adjust the toe piece by removing the hardware from the bottom side of the binding. Once you get the toe piece off, cut a little bit off of each side of the toe piece and move the holes inward to help pull the toe piece down over your foot. This will do two things. It will increase the overall tightness of the binding and move your foot back into the binding, decreasing heel lift. Now that you've chosen your board, bindings, and fins, it's time to set up your wakeboard. There's a few things to consider when setting up your wakeboard. You want to get to know your stance angle and stance width, so if you ever change boards, those same measurements move from board to board. This is important because the insert widths may change from board manufacturer to board manufacturer, and different length boards may have different insert widths. It's important to keep these the same so you'll feel comfortable standing on a new board, but also to prevent injury. So let's start off by determining which foot is going to be your front foot. One good way to determine if you're going to be left foot forward or right foot forward is have someone push you backwards. Whichever foot lands to support you, that will be your back foot. Another method is to act like you're playing tug of war. The stance that you naturally get into will be the stance that you feel comfortable resisting the pull of the rope. Next, let's figure out your stance width. You want your width to be a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. This will make you stable side to side, and you don't want to be too wide because then you put a lot of stress on your hips and your knees. This is a measurement that you have to kind of play around with to feel what's comfortable for you. Obviously, the wider you go, the more stable you're going to be side to side. A good way to find your stance angle is to jump high into the air and then land naturally and look down at your feet. Your feet will naturally turn outward and will kind of look like a duck stands on the ground. We call this a duck stance. A good starting point on your wakeboard is a second insert from the outside and the outside row of holes and slots on your binding plate. Place the binding on the board so that insert lines up with the row of holes on the outside of the binding plate and turn it to about 9 degrees outward. On the outside row of holes on the outside of the binding plate, find the middle hole. This will be a good starting point to adjust your stance angle. Start your hardware, but don't tighten it all the way so you can still adjust your stance angle. Again, we're going to find the second insert on the outside towards the tip or tail and line the binding up with that insert and the outside set of holes. Once you line up the hole and insert, turn the binding outward to about 9 degrees so you have a duck stance. On the outside row of holes, find the middle hole and then start your hardware. Tighten it down snug so you can still adjust your stance angle. On the inside row of holes, you're going to want to find the hole or slot that adjusts the binding to about 9 degrees ducked. Thread your hardware on this hole and then look at the binding to see if the angle looks good to you. Remember, this is just a starting point and you may have to try this stance to see if it works for you out on the water. Make sure you tighten down your hardware very tight to secure the binding to the board. For riding both switch and regular in the same position, it's important to have the same angle on your front and back foot. So on the opposite side of the board, you're going to turn the angle outward in the opposite direction. Remember, you can adjust the width on one set of inserts by moving to the inside row of holes and slots. Some binding plates make adjusting your stance angle very easy. First, you can fasten the plate to the board, turn the binding straight, and then turn the binding outward to find your exact stance angle. All you have to do with these types of bindings is figure out your stance width and how far you want the binding to sit towards either edge of the board, toe side or heel side. Once you find this placement, you just tighten up the hardware and then adjust your stance angle. It's very simple. Again, make sure you tighten up your hardware very tight, and all hardware tends to loosen up after a few rides, so it's something you have to check periodically. A loose set of hardware can easily damage a set of inserts and an entire board. And if your binding is loose and comes off during a trick, you can really injure your body. So always check your hardware before and after each set that you take out on the water. Make sure you find the stance angle that best suits your leg type. If your stance angle is turned outward too much, this can promote injury by forcing your knees to bend inward. If your stance angle is too straight, the same thing can occur. Your knees won't bend as they're designed and you can cause injury. So experiment with your stance and try to find the stance angle that best suits your leg type and puts the least amount of stress on your knees. Now that you know how to put your bindings on your board, it's important to get to know your exact stance width. Ideally, you'd measure from the center of the bindings, but this can be hard to get an exact measurement. So what you do is you measure from the inside of one binding where it's attached to the board to the outside of the other binding where it's attached to the board. So place your bindings on the board and line them up with a set of inserts and then measure across the bindings from the inside of one to the outside of the other to see if this matches up with your stance width. Another way that you can measure your stance if your board is already set up is to take one binding off the board and then measure from the inside of the other binding that stayed on the board to the outside insert where the binding was fastened to the board. This should give you your exact stance width, and you can transfer this from board to board. Again, after you get your board set up, take a step back and check out the angles to see if they match up with what looks best for you. Now it's time to put your fins on your board. The first thing that you're going to want to do is to put the hardware through the holes on the top side of the board so they stick out through the bottom side of the board. Turn the board over to the bottom side of the board so you can see the hardware sticking through the board. And it's important to have the leading edge of the fin facing in towards the middle of the board so the fin functions correctly. Start your screws and tighten your fin down to the board very securely. These screws may loosen up as well over time, so make sure you check them in between sets. As you can see here, the lower end of the fin, or the leading edge of the fin, is always pointed towards the middle, and the high end is always facing out towards the tip. One of the key elements of wakeboarding is being connected to the boat by a rope. There are many different kinds of ropes used for wakeboarding, but Spectra is probably the best because of its low stretch characteristics. You want a nice tight pull from the boat. The way to test this is to push the rope inward. If the rope holds its position, then you probably have a Spectra line or a low stretch line. If the rope rebounds, then you probably have a stretchy rope, a poly-E or polypropylene line. You'll see many different variations of Spectra ropes out on the market. Different ropes have different features to protect the rope from the sun or make it float in the water. Each line may have a different feel, and some riders like a more responsive, tighter feel from the boat. So you may want to try different types of Spectra to see which one works best for you. When it comes to handles, every handle has a triangle shape and is usually pretty wide so you can pass the handle very easily. You will find handles made up of different materials to give the triangle more support or just give the handle an overall different feel. Taking the floats off of a handle decreases the weight of the handle so you can pass it quickly, and you can incorporate the floats into the grip. You'll see a wide variety of grips and different design handles on the market. There are many different characteristics, but every handle is a standard 5 foot in length. You also want to find the grip that best suits your hand size so it's easy to hold on when behind the boat on the water. You will also see wrapped handles on some models. These handles are designed so you can do wrap tricks out on the water. A wrap trick is a variation of a trick where you wrap the rope around your body and release it in the air, and the boat helps you unwind for the trick. Most handles have the same overall look and elements, and it's just a piece of equipment that you have to try before you buy to see which works best for you. Most wakeboard handles come separate from the rope, so you may have to buy a wakeboard line as well as a handle. The standard wakeboard line is 75 feet, but there's longer ropes out on the market. When you combine the rope with the handle and find your length, it's important to attach the rope to the boat with a slip knot. Put your hand through the end loop, grab the rope, and pull it through the loop to make the slip knot, and then place the loop on the pylon. Pull the rope tight so the knot locks onto the pylon and the rope is secured to the boat. If you shorten up the rope to the middle extension, use the same technique to attach the extension to the pylon. When you wrap up a rope, it's important to wrap up the rope the same way every time so the rope stays tangle-free. Try not to wrap the rope around your arm because every time you wrap it around your arm, you put a twist in the rope and it can make the rope very tangly. As you wrap the rope up, turn the rope inward and make small loops about the size of the triangle of the handle. When you get to the end of the rope, create a smaller loop so you can pull that loop through the handle and around the back, and then put the end of the rope through the loop so you can cinch it down and secure the line tight. This is a great way to store your handle, and it'll make it less tangly when you want to use it next time you go wakeboarding. Another technique is wrapping the rope around your bindings. When you do this, put the handle over one binding and then wrap the rope around the tops of your bindings in a crisscross fashion. When you get towards the end of the rope, wrap the remaining rope around a few times and then pull it tight to secure it. When you get out on the water, it's time to figure out what rope length to ride at. For beginner to intermediate riders, you may want to ride at 70 feet or shorter, so it makes clearing the wakes very easy. As you advance in skill level, you may want to lengthen the rope so the wakes are wider and you have more time in the air. Nowadays, a lot of pro riders are riding longer than 80 feet because the width of the wakes gives them a lot of time in the air to do their tricks, and the big arc allows them to edge in very fast. For very beginner riders, you may want to try lengthening the rope very long because everything moves slower on a bigger arc, and this may help them feel more comfortable. After you use your rope and handle a few times, it may be difficult to get the extensions apart or remove the handle from the rope. Here's a little trick to help you get them apart. Take each side of one loop and pull them outward very hard. This will separate the knot and loosen it up so you can separate each extension or the handle from the rope. The most important part of equipment in wakeboarding is your life vest. Always wear a life vest out on the water while you're wakeboarding. You'll also see a wide variety of vests, from Coast Guard approved vests all the way to comp vests. Comp vests are vests that are not approved by the Coast Guard and probably won't float you if you're floating in the water and you let all the air out of your lungs. Here we have a Coast Guard approved vest, and it's a standard nylon vest with straps and buckles to help you adjust the size of the vest. To determine whether a vest is Coast Guard approved or not, look to the inside of the vest for the US CG approved label. It's important to have a Coast Guard approved vest for each passenger in the boat. These vests are made to save your life and have a lot of padding, but can be bulky when wakeboarding out on the water. The comp vest is made for comfort and maneuverability and has a thin profile but has limited flotation. If you look towards the insides of these vests, you'll see a big warning sign saying this garment is not a life jacket. These vests are made for comfort and ease of movement but have limited flotation, and you're taking a big risk by wearing one of these out on the water. To end the equipment section, we'll go over a little bit about boats. One cool thing about wakeboarding is you can ride behind any boat that has enough power to get you out of the water. There are many different kinds of boats out there today, so let's go through a bunch of different types. Here we have a V-drive wakeboard specific boat, but you can use any ski boat or any boat that has enough power to pull you out of the water, like a John boat. A lot of people ride behind personal watercrafts because they're a cheap way to get into the sport, and even pontoon boats. Within these boats, you'll see different engine types. This is a V-drive and is ideal for wakeboarding because the engine's in the back, and the back of the boat will be pushed into the water, making the wake very big. You may also see direct drive boats where the motor is in the center of the boat, or even outboard boats. These boats tend to be the most dangerous, along with inboard outboard boats, because the prop in the gear is directly behind the boat instead of underneath it like inboard boats. Here we have an IO, or inboard outboard boat, where the engine is on the inside of the boat but the gear and the prop are on the outside. You also have jet powered boats. Many companies are making accessories nowadays to accommodate wakeboarding. Here we have a pylon, and this allows the rope to be attached up high to give you a better pull upward. Most wakeboard boats are standard with a tower, and you can even get board racks so you can store the boards on your towers to keep them off the upholstery and keep them from scratching your boat. There are many different kinds of board racks and accessories that you can attach to your tower, and having a tower on your boat frees up a lot of space and allows you to walk around your boat easily. You also see ballast bags and even ballast systems. Here we have a ballast bag that sits in the back of the boat to help push the back of the boat into the water to help enhance the wake. If your boat doesn't come stock with a ballast system, then you can purchase a ballast bag to help make your wake bigger. Ballast systems are ideal because with a flip of a switch, you can fill and empty your tanks and even adjust the wakes from side to side.
Boating is a pastime that just takes time on the water. You have to get to know your boat, your equipment, and your waterways. In this section, we'll familiarize you with driving your boat, driving patterns, and other little tips that we've learned along the way. So let's jump into the boat and get out on the water.
The first thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to boating is boat safety. Again, I can't stress how important it is to wear a life vest when you're out wakeboarding. Along with your life vests, you have to have a throwable cushion on the boat. This is a cushion design so you can easily throw flotation to a person in the water, and there's straps so they can hold on to it. Another piece of equipment that should remain in your boat at all times is your fire extinguisher, and you should check this to see if it's full and up to date. If your fire extinguisher isn't full, you may get a ticket. As well as a fire extinguisher, it's important to have a sound-making device. Most boats come with a horn, but if you don't have a horn, a whistle will do. This is used to warn other boaters and signal for help. Before you get out on the water, check your maximum capacities plate to see how many persons, weight, or gear you're allowed in your boat. As a driver, it's important to attach the lanyard to your body, so if you get thrown from the boat will turn off. Before you start your boat, make sure you run the blower for the recommended time stated by your boat manufacturer. This will help evacuate any gas fumes from the engine box and prevent the engine from blowing up when started. When you're out on the water, the rope is a dangerous element and another safety issue involved in wakeboarding. The thin spectra line can easily get wrapped around a finger or arm, and it's important to only allow your rider to take just the handle off the back of the boat. When your rider is getting into the water, lay the coils of the rope on the sun deck of the boat and just hand them the handle. So when they get in the water, they'll be moving away from the rope and there's no way they can get tangled up in it. After the rider gets into the water, instruct them to push away from the platform before the engine is started. Another thing to remember before you start the boat is to make sure all your passengers are seated in their seats and not sitting on the edges of the boat. When everybody is seated, look back at your rider to make sure he's clear of the back of the boat, make sure the throttle's in neutral, and then turn on the boat. With the boat started, idle forward to tighten up the line and make sure your rider is in position and gives you the signal to go. It's important to only use the words "hit it" to avoid confusion when pulling someone out of the water.
Hit it!
After your rider is up and out of the water and you're underway, make sure your spotter relays signals to adjust the boat speed and let you know that the rider has fallen. Some areas may require that you have a spotter and a flag in the boat at all times. When the rider falls, it's a spotter's duty to hold up the flag the entire time that the rider is down in the water. If your area does not require a spotter or a flag, you must have a mirror to tow someone behind your boat. Whenever you pick up a fallen rider, it's important to always approach them on the driver's side so they always stay visible. When the rider is finished with a set, again approach them on the driver's side slowly and with caution, and make sure you turn off the engine before they get near the back of the boat. This is especially important with outboard and inboard-outboard boats where the propeller is sticking out the back of the boat. In between sets and in between riders getting in and out of the water, coil up the rope again and lay just the coils on the sun deck, only allowing your riders to take just the handle off the back of the boat. When it comes to driving a boat, it's important to get to know your driver's area, your speedos, your gauges, and your throttle. Each boat is different, and it takes some time in the driver's seat to get used to each boat. The first thing that you want to do when you get in the driver's seat is adjust the seat so you're comfortable with the steering wheel and the throttle, but so you can also see over the bow of the boat and in the mirror. Make sure you adjust the mirror so you can see as much as possible behind you. Before starting the engine, give the throttle a jiggle to make sure it's in neutral. And most boats won't even start if the throttle isn't in neutral. To get the boat out of neutral, you have to pull up on the throttle and then move it forward. To get it back into neutral, just pull the throttle back and it should lock into place. To go in reverse, you also have to pull up on the throttle and then move the throttle backwards into reverse. When grabbing the throttle, try not to grab it with a full hand. This will make it difficult to keep speed and make small adjustments when trying to hold wakeboard speeds. When you grab the throttle, grab it only with 2 or 3 fingers, and it's usually your thumb, index, and middle finger, so you can make small adjustments when pulling a rider behind the boat. This will stop you from moving your whole wrist and only allow you to use your fingers to make small adjustments. I like to grab the throttle with my thumb and index finger and rest my arm on the side of the boat. That way I'm only making small adjustments with my fingers and my whole arm isn't moving. When pulling a rider across the water, it's important to glance back and forth between the speedo and the mirror. It's important to not only use the speedo to keep speed, you have to look at the wake as well and even listen to the engine to see if it's accelerating or decelerating. When you pull your rider out of the water, it's important not to jerk them out of the water. You want to accelerate smoothly and aggressively to get the rider up and planing on top of the water. So tighten up the rope and slowly push the throttle down until you see the rider up and planing across the top of the water. When wakeboarding on your lake or waterway, it's important to know proper driving etiquette. Driving consistent patterns will keep your lake calm and enjoyable throughout the day. It's important to communicate with other boaters on the lake so they understand your driving patterns and they can run the same patterns as well. If everybody understands the same driving patterns, you can keep one side of the lake calm the entire day. So let's go over some of those driving patterns now so you understand how to keep your lake calm. When pulling a wakeboarder, it's important to only run one half of the lake. This way you'll keep that side of the lake calm and the waves will be pushed to the other side. If you only drive on one side of the lake, the waves on the shore side of the boat will always dissipate into the shoreline. The waves on the other side will always travel across the lake. Here we have a common driving pattern that helps keep your lake calm. When driving down the lake, always turn away from shore and then turn towards shore to turn around and then right back down your line. If you run this consistent pattern, your waves will always spread and the line will always stay calm. As you drive down your line, make a hard left-hand turn away from shore and then turn right back towards shore to make a circle so you can look down your line and then drive straight down it again. On the other side of the lake, you're going to make the opposite turn to the right and then back towards shore to the left. As you come around the turn, you'll see the prop wash in the water so you can run the same line over and over again. As you drive this pattern, you'll see the waves spread, and as you turn away from shore, you'll see the left side of your boat push the waves out towards the center of the lake, and the right side of your boat push waves towards shore as well. As you make the circle and come around, the line should be calm again. As you make the right-hand turn on the other side, the waves are pushed outward towards the other side of the lake and towards shore as you make the turn, and the waves on the inside converge and dissipate. If you drive the incorrect path and you make your first turn away from shore, as you come around the turn and straighten out to get back into your line, the waves off your boat will be pushed straight down your line. As you come around for the second pass, you'll be driving straight through these waves, and eventually your line will become very rough and you'll have to stop and let everything calm down. When a rider falls, it's important to do a consistent turnaround to pick them up as well. A lot of drivers don't realize when they turn around, they spread rollers all over the lake. So come off plane slow and straight and idle back around to pick up your rider. Come to a complete stop, turn the boat towards the driver's side, idle back to your rider, and then pick them up again on the driver's side of the boat. Picking up the rider on the driver's side of the boat allows you to communicate with the rider to adjust speeds or even talk about the trick they just fell on. When you pick up a rider and drive a circle around them, make sure you stay a bit wider so the rope falls into the water and makes it easy for them to grab. When a rider falls and the driver accelerates and makes a big huge circle to pick up their rider, the boat will spread waves all over the lake, and it's also dangerous because the boat is moving very fast to pick up the rider. Take your time and idle back to the rider. When driving on a lake with many boats, avoid a head-on collision by veering to the right and towards the driver's side of the boat. Another part of wakeboarding and learning how to drive is learning how to drive double-ups. This is just another element of wakeboarding that allows a rider to take their tricks bigger and even further on a wakeboard. To drive a proper double-up, turn away from shore at about 60 degrees to set up the line so you can drive through it for the double-up. The waves will be perpendicular to your boat path, and as you come around, you'll drive the boat straight through them for a 90-degree double-up. Double-ups take practice, and each rider has their preference for how they like their double-ups, so it's something that's just going to take time and practice. As you get more interested in wakeboarding and your riding grows in skill level, you'll want to weight your boat down more to make the wake bigger. There's some important things to know when weighting your boat. Most boats will have compartments where you can hide weight, store lead weights, or even put ballast tanks or ballast bags. Most feed drives have compartments on each side of the engine where you can store a weight to push the back of the boat down and make the wake bigger. They also have storage in the front of the boat where additional weight can be placed to help push the front of the boat down as well. Along with weighting the front and the back of the boat, you can weight the middle as well under each seat. It's important to weight the entire boat and not just the back or the front. In the middle of some boats, you'll find a ski locker. This is a great place to hide weight so you can keep it off the floor and walk around easily. You don't want to weight the back of the boat 100% because it'll make the wake very steep and it will make the boat hard to plane out. On the other hand, you don't want to weight the front of the boat too much because it'll make the wake very mellow and it'll be washy at the top. It's important to distribute the weight evenly and push the entire boat down into the water. The more weight that you put in the boat, the further it will be pushed into the water, and it'll make the wake bigger, but the boat will lose handling characteristics and it may take longer for the boat to plane out. A good weight configuration is 60 in the back and 40 in the front, but this is something that you'll just have to experiment to see which works best for your boat. Along with weighting the boat front to back, you also have to weight the boat side to side to make sure the wakes stay even. If the boat is weighted too heavily on one side, the opposite side will have whitewash. Move weight to the side with whitewash and the wake should clean up. If you move too much weight, you'll see whitewash on the opposite side again. So move the weight back towards the center to even out the wakes. It's easy to adjust the wakes by moving a little bit of weight, people, or even flipping the switches on your ballast system. To keep your boat in great condition, it's important to practice good care and maintenance habits. In this section, we're going to teach you how to prepare your boat so you can put it in the water to go wakeboarding. When attaching the trailer to the truck, it's always important to make sure that your hitch size matches up with your trailer. Make sure the hitch is fastened and locked into place, and the gear is attached to the back bumper of the vehicle. It's the driver's responsibility to make sure all cables, all brake lights, and all attachments are fastened securely. Most trailers come with 1 or 2 cables or chains, and you should attach these to the bumper in case the trailer jumps off the hitch while you're trailing the boat down the road. Many trailers have an extra cable as well that locks up the brakes in case this mishap occurs. From there, you want to make sure the boat is attached to the trailer very securely, so when backing down steep ramps, the boat won't slide off the trailer. Before you put your boat in the water, go through your engine compartment so you can check your oil to see if it is full and clean, and give the engine a quick once-over to see if you can see any leaks or broken hoses that may create a fire when the engine is started. It's important to check your bilge pumps to see if they're working, and your training fluid to see if it's full, because with a lot of weight in the boat, you put a lot of stress on the transmission. One of the most common mistakes when launching a boat is leaving the plug out. Make sure you leave the plugs in a visible place so it is obvious that the plugs need to be put in. Make sure these are secured tightly because motor vibrations can loosen them and cause them to fall out. Most boats have a plug in the ski locker or bow of the boat and even one back towards the swim platform. It's important to keep these plugs out when the boat is out of the water in case it rains, that way the water can drain out. When backing the boat into the water, make sure you back down slowly to prevent from sliding down a steep ramp, and make sure the ramp is maintained so you don't get stuck and you can pull the boat back out of the water. As the driver of the boat, you should communicate with the driver of the truck so they're aware of the proper depth or any problems that may occur when backing the boat into the water. Do this by communicating with hand signals or even talking through windows. Try not to take too long launching your boat into the water and make sure the boat is prepped before you back into the ramp. When the boat's in the water and at its proper depth, the driver of the boat should walk to the front of the boat and unattach the boat from the trailer. It's important not to do this before you back the boat into the water. I've seen many boats slide off the trailer on steep ramps, and you don't want this to happen to your expensive wakeboard boat. Again, make sure you run the blower to evacuate any gas fumes and prevent the engine from exploding. Now you're ready to back the boat off the trailer, so make sure the throttle's in neutral and then start the boat. It is smart to disengage the throttle so you can rev the motor a little bit to warm up the engine and make sure it's running correctly before you back the boat off the trailer. Re-engage the throttle and then slowly ease the boat off the trailer. While the driver of the truck is parking, make sure you run the boat a little bit to see if everything is running correctly and you don't get stuck out on the lake. Again, make sure not to take too long launching your boat and make sure the boat is prepped before you get into a ramp slot. There are usually zones at your local ramps that allow you to prep the boat so you can get in and out of a ramp slot very quickly, and you won't hold up traffic. Launching your boat is one of the most common times that you can damage your prop, so get to know your local ramps and make sure they're maintained. It might even be worth getting into the water to see if there's any debris, or just to see if the water's deep enough so you can back your boat into the water. Damaging a prop can ruin your day as well as your pocketbook. As a passenger in the boat, it's best to keep your shoes on shore to keep dirt or sand out of the boat. Dirt and sand is probably the worst thing for your gel coat and the interior, so respect your driver's property and rules. The edge of your wakeboard and the fins on your wakeboard are very sharp and can tear the vinyl or upholstery very easily. So be cautious when loading your boards and equipment into the boats. It takes only a little tear to ruin an entire seat or engine cover, so be careful and keep your boards in the board racks. If you're riding with friends, they'll appreciate if you bring gas and pitch in whenever you can if you're using someone else's boat. A half-hour set in a loaded up boat will use over 5 gallons of gas, so always bring extra to make up for all the costs of owning and maintaining a boat. If you don't have gas cans or can't bring gas, make sure you pitch in whenever you can and give the owner money for gas and maintenance. No one likes the rider that just uses you for your boat and never pitches in. So if you want to keep your riding options broad, be considerate and help out as much as possible. When you're done with your set, have the driver of the truck back the trailer back down into the water and approach the trailer slowly to take the boat out of the water. Most trailers have guide rails to help you ease the boat onto the trailer. Once you get lined up onto the trailer, ease it up against the front bumper and attach the bow winch to the front of the boat. Crank it down tightly and then signal to the driver that you're ready for him to take the boat out of the water. The driver of the truck should ease slowly out of the water to prevent from sliding or getting stuck when pulling your boat out of the water. It might even help to give the boat a little throttle to help push the truck and the boat out of the water. But make sure you don't damage your prop when you do this and to turn the boat off right when you get out of the water. When you're done wakeboarding for the day, make sure you wipe down the boat to prevent stains from ruining the upholstery. And when you're storing the boat out of the water, make sure you cover it again so the sun doesn't destroy the upholstery.
Now that you understand your equipment better, you're ready to ride. So let's go through some steps to help you get your equipment on easily and begin wakeboarding.
Once you're out on the water and it's your turn to ride, grab your equipment and make your way to the back of the boat. The first piece of equipment that you want to put on is always your life vest. We always recommend that you wear a Coast Guard approved vest, and wearing a comp vest is taking a big risk. Once your vest is on and secure, it's time to attach the rope to the tower. Make a slip knot like we explained before and slide the slip knot over the pylon and pull the rope tight. Remember, the rope is a big safety issue involved in wakeboarding. So when the rope is attached to the tower, make sure you lay the coils on the sun deck of the boat and just allow the rider to take only the handle off the back of the boat. Before getting in your board, you may want to stretch to loosen up your muscles and help yourself prevent injury. This may also decrease soreness after wakeboarding for the day. Once you're all stretched out, grab your board and make your way to the back of the boat. Make sure you're careful not to let the edges of your board or the fins touch the upholstery on your way to the back swim platform. Once you get to the back of the boat and on the swim platform, dip your board in the water to wet both bindings to help get your feet in easily. You may also want to keep a bottle of soap or binding lubricant available in the boat to help riders get in and out of their bindings. One way to get into your bindings is to put soap on your hands and then rub the soap all over your feet so you can slide your feet into your bindings easily. Remember, a little bit of soap goes a long way, and make sure that your soap is biodegradable. If you don't want to put soap on your hands, another way you can get in your bindings is by putting soap on the back heel piece of the binding. Fold back the heel piece, put a line of soap on the heel piece, and then push the heel piece forward to mix up the soap into the binding. After the soap is on the binding, stick your foot into the binding, and it helps to move your foot in and out to mix up the soap, so you can slide your foot in easily. Now that you're in your board, it's time to get off the back of the boat. So make sure you only grab the handle and then sit down on the swim platform. From there, push yourself in the water and then push yourself away from the boat. As you move away from the boat, make sure your arms and hands are free of any coils of the rope. As you wakeboard more frequently, you'll learn different ways to get in the water. Instead of sitting on the swim platform, you can stand up and slide into the water. You can do this by sliding the tail of the board off of the swim platform, then lean away from the boat and slide into the water. This is probably the easiest way to get in the water.
One of the biggest misconceptions about wakeboarding is that it takes a lot of strength to get up. But if done correctly, it can be accomplished with very little effort, even behind a boat with very little power. Here are some of the techniques we use to get you up and out of the water with very little effort.
When getting up on a wakeboard, you should concentrate on good position and let the power of the boat pull you out of the water. If you exert too much energy, it can make getting up very difficult. In this section, we're going to take you through deep water starts, all the way through to dock starts. The best way to figure out your position is to practice on land, and the key is sliding your butt up against your heels. After your butt is to your heels, and you're planing on top of the water, you want to slowly stand up into the wakeboarding position. Again, make sure your butt slides up against your heels so the board doesn't plow through the water and you'll plane out easily. From there, the boat will start to pull you forward. Before you get up on the water, it's important to know the wakeboarding position and the position you need to stand in on top of the water. Your shoulders should be facing the boat, your arms should be relaxed, and your hips should be in front of you so you can resist the pull of the rope. If your hips get behind you, the boat will win, it'll pull you forward, and you'll go out the front. A big part of getting your hips forward is rolling your knees towards your toes and a little bit towards the boat. Rolling your knees forward accomplishes two things. It gives you a soft position so you can absorb any bumps when riding across the water, and it pushes your hips forward in front of your head so you can resist the pull of the handle. As we go through the deep water start, you'll notice that everyone gets up side sliding. The reason that riders get up side sliding is because the board planes out easier when it's sitting sideways in the water. So when you're sitting in the water, let the board float up in front of you and put your knees up to your chest and your arms around your knees. Let your arms relax so they're an extension of the rope. As the rope tightens up, relax your arms and allow the boat to pull you forward. Don't be afraid to let the board go under the water, and make sure your butt slides up against your heels. With your board underwater and your heels up against your butt, allow the boat to pull your chest up against your knees. As your chest comes forward, make sure your arms are around your knees on the outside. In this position, your job is done, and you can let the boat pull you out of the water. Make sure you relax and concentrate on holding your position. Once planing on top of the water, slowly stand up and turn into the wakeboarding position. It's important to keep the board side sliding through the water to help you plane out easier. And if you turn it early, you'll get out of control and you won't plane as easily. With the board planing on top of the water, slowly stand up and turn into the wakeboarding position. Concentrate on rolling your knees forward and pushing your hips towards the handle. And remember, the key to getting up is staying relaxed and holding your position. Let the power of the boat do all the work, stay relaxed and don't fight it. If you're having problems getting up, it probably means that you're pulling with your arms and pushing with your legs too much, and the board's plowing through the water. Make sure you pull your heels down towards your butt so the board can cut through the water and plane out easily. If it's uncomfortable hugging your knees and putting your arms on the outside of your knees, it may help to put your arms on the inside of your knees, but still allow your chest to come forward against your legs. Another way to start on a wakeboard is a seated dock start. This is an easy position because you're almost standing up before the boat pulls you. As the rope tightens up and the boat starts to pull you off the dock, lean back a little bit to resist the pull of the rope. Let the boat pull you off the dock, and it may help to side slide for a while to help you plane out easily. Make sure you get your hips in front of you to resist the pull of the rope so you don't fall forward and sink in the water. The next starting position we're going to show you is a standing dock start. This is the hardest of the three, and it may take a little practice. As you get ready to start, lay the coils on the dock so the boat can pull the coils into the water and without any knots. As the driver pulls away slowly, keep an eye on the rope. When it gets tight, the driver will accelerate, so anticipate the line getting tight so you can jump in the water and then lean back to resist the pull of the rope. When you hear the boat accelerate and the line is tight, jump into the water and then lean back to resist the pull of the rope. Again, it may help to stay side sliding for a while to help you plane out so you don't sink in the water. Through the years, we have developed riding positions to help you gain maximum control of your board. These positions will be used as building blocks for tricks down the road, but will also help you feel more comfortable no matter what position you end up in out on the water. So let's take you through these positions so after you get up, you'll understand how to ride on your board and balance across the water. Now that you're up on the water, let's go through all the different riding positions. These positions will be used in many tricks down the road, and you should get to know every position so you can incorporate them into these tricks. The first position that we're going to go over is the normal riding position. In this position, you can ride either right or left foot forward, and it's the most common position in wakeboarding. A regular footed rider is left foot forward, and a goofy footed rider is right foot forward. When you're riding with your front foot forward, this is commonly known as your regular stance, even if you're regular or goofy footed. If the rider is riding in the normal riding position and switches so their front foot is now in back and their back foot is now in front, we call this switch stance. When the rider switches back so the regular foot is forward, the rider is now back to the normal riding position. In the normal riding position, the rider's shoulders will be facing the boat and the rider's hips will be perpendicular to the shoulders. Your knees will be rolled forward over your toes and your hips will be pushed forward towards the boat so you can resist the pull of the rope, and you'll have a soft position when you're riding across the water. You'll use this position to edge heel side and toe side, and you can ride in the normal position with either one or two hands on the handle. As you get up behind the boat, it may be easier to ride with your front hand on the handle and your backhand off the handle so everything is in line with the board. This will help you balance, and you can start to carve behind the boat in this position. As you get comfortable with one hand on the handle, hedging back and forth in the middle of the wakes, put two hands on the handle and continue the same motion. When you're used to this crossed up position, work your way outside of the wakes with two hands and begin to carve out in the flats. Do this away from the wakes, and we call this carving, and you can use this as a warm-up exercise to increase your board control skills. Eventually you'll work your way up to heel side jumps and toe side jumps, as well as flips and even spins. The next position that we're going to talk about is the cuff position. This position will help you learn how to pass the handle and give you a better overall feel when your body is facing backwards away from the boat. To get in the cuff position, drop your back hand off the handle and turn the handle down. As you turn the handle down, look away from the boat and break at the waist so you bend over. Turning the handle down and bending over will bring the handle to you so you don't have to use your arm strength to try to pull the handle in. You'll use this position to work your way towards your first handle passes and eventually towards the blind landing. The cuff position gives you a better overall feel on the water when your upper body and head are facing back away from the boat. So make sure you dial in this position, because down the road you'll need it for flips with handle passes and those hard blind landings. After the cuff position, you'll work your way up to the blind position. It's very similar to the cuff position and body position, but you're only riding with one hand on the handle in the half wrap position. We call this position blind because you're landing, looking back away from the boat while the boat is pulling you forward. This position will give you ultimate control over any landing in wakeboarding. The blind landing position is the hardest of the three, and if you master this position, you'll feel comfortable in any position on a wakeboard. This position takes a bit more arm strength to hold, and something that takes time to master. Work on it a little each set, and you'll see your comfort level increase. Next, we have the front side slide. This slide is to help you gain board control and give you a better feel for your heel side edge. The reason it's called the front side slide is because you're turning your body front side toward the boat. If you move the handle side to side in a straight line across the back of the boat, you have the leverage to turn your hips and your body. If you move the handle to the right, you'll spin to the left, and vice versa. This position is great for doing lip slides and tricks on the wake, as well as gaining control when you slide out sideways on mistakes during tricks. Whenever you turn into the front side slide position, make sure you bend down before you turn. This will put you in the proper position and give you the leverage to get into the sliding position. Bend at your knees and sit down towards the water before you move the handle to spin. The next slide is the backside slide. For this slide, you're going to turn the opposite way, backside, so your back is facing the boat, and the heel side edge is facing the back of the boat. This slide will increase the overall control of your toe side edge and prepare you for backside 180s. As you turn into the backside slide position, the handle is very close, and it makes doing your first backside 180s very easy. To do this slide, get some speed on your heel side edge, and then switch directions to help blow your fins out. At the same time, move the handle behind your back so you get into the slide position. The same rule applies, so use the handle to help spin your body into position. The backside slide is easier to accomplish and safer to practice at slower boat speeds, and switching your edge or changing directions will help you blow your fins out to get into the sliding position. Once you've conquered this slide with one hand, try it with two hands on the handle. When you can side slide with two hands on the handle, you'll notice that your toe side edge will become very powerful. Conquering the two-handed backside slide forces the rider into the proper toe side edging position. You're turning your body past the needed toe side position to an extreme, so finding the normal toe side edging position is a lot easier. You will also learn how to control your lean and the direction you lean on the rope. The last slide we're going to talk about is the cuff slide. This is very similar to the backside slide, but with your upper body in the cuff position. The best way to start this position is to ride cuff with a little bit of lean over your toes, blow your fins out, and get into the backside slide position. In the cuff sliding position, you can lean back and forth over your tip or tail and move across the back of the boat. This position will make it even easier to pass the handle when sliding across the water and get you prepared for your first backside 180 handle passes.
On the water, you're going to eventually want to learn how to move back and forth across the back of the boat. Call that edging. When you learn to edge in all the different riding positions, it sets yourself up for all the landing positions for all the different tricks. So go ahead and spend the time to learn all the edging positions so you don't have to take steps back in the future.
Now that you understand all the riding positions, let's teach you how to edge in those riding positions. Edging is important so you can move across the back of the boat to do tricks. If you're leaning over your toes or your heels, then you're edging. If you're standing straight over your board, then you're riding flat across the water. Edging is much like leaning or turning on a skateboard or surfboard. Whichever way you lean, that's the direction you go. The only difference in wakeboarding is you're getting pulled by a rope, so you have to resist that pull. After you make your turn by leaning over your toes or your heels, as you would on a skateboard or a surfboard, you have to change the direction you lean by leaning down the rope to be in the proper position. So you have to lean over your toes or heels to start, but then you have to pay attention to which way the rope is pointed so you can lean down the rope to get into the proper position. You may want to start by edging back and forth inside the middle of the wakes at about 10 to 12 miles an hour by just leaning and looking towards each wake. By going slow, you'll make the wakes wide enough to make big S-shaped carves in the middle of the wakes. Carving in the middle of the wakes should only be done at slow speeds so you don't form bad body position habits. The first edge that we're going to talk about is the heel side edge. When you're edging heel side, start the edge with your shoulders. When a rider sticks his butt out first, we call this edging with your butt. Make sure you start the lean with your shoulders and point your belly up towards the sky so your hips move in front of you. At the same time you point your belly up towards the sky, roll your knees forward over your toes and this will make you fall back against the rope so you can edge out away from the wakes. As you'll notice in this position, my knees are rolled forward a little bit over my toes, my hips are in front of my head, and my chest is facing upward towards the sky. As you build up your heel side edge, you'll be able to do intense tricks, flips with spins, and even grabs. Next, let's talk about toe side. Toe side is a very twisted position. Your shoulders are still facing the boat, but your lower body is twisted beneath you, and you're leaning over your toes instead of your heels. As you start this edge, start by pointing your belly up towards the sky and letting your knees roll forward so your shoulders fall back against the rope. Make sure you don't break at the waist so you're leaning forward. This will put you in a wrong position and will probably make you go out the front on your wakeboard. If you're leaning forward, you won't be in a power position or in a position to create good leverage on the rope. Roll your knees forward and point your belly up towards the sky and try to touch your back on the water. Remember, lean down the rope and not in the direction you want to go. As you get more comfortable with toe side, you'll realize that this twisted position can be used for many different trick variations. Many riders are intimidated by toe side because they're leaning down towards their face, but these falls really aren't that bad. Don't put off learning toe side because you'll eventually have to take steps back and learn it anyway if you want to learn harder tricks down the road. Remember, the difference between heel side and toe side is your lower body is twisted beneath you and you're leaning over your toes instead of your heels. There's two different ways you can spin on a wakeboard. You have front side and back side rotations. If you're doing a 180 and there's no handle pass, then chances are that rotation is front side. Another way to distinguish the rotation is in respect to the wake. If your chest opens towards the wake, then your rotation is front side. As you approach the wake and take off, you'll notice the rider's chest opening towards the lip of the wake. This determines the rotation as front side. These rotations got their names from skateboarding and how the skateboarder would approach and spin off the lip of a vert ramp. With the same translation, you can figure out the rotation by which way the rider turns as he spins to the lip of our ramp out on the water. Riders will also have a more natural way of spinning, so you'll have to go out and try these rotations to see what works best for you. You can spin both heel side and toe side on your wakeboard, and toe side front side spins tend to be easier because you're just untwisting your hips from their already twisted position. Whenever you spin on a wakeboard, you use the handle. You move the handle in a straight line across the back of the boat, and this will give you the leverage to twist your hips and spin your body. If you want to spin to the left, move the handle to the right. If you want to pass the handle or spin further and faster, pull the handle hard in towards your body and move it at the same time to create slack so you can pass the handle easily. The harder you pull, the more you'll advance towards the boat, and the slack in the rope will increase, as well as the amount of time the rope stays slack for those multiple handle passes. The next rotation is backside. This rotation is signified by the rider turning his back towards the wake and the rider passing the handle on the first 180. Backside rotations are a little more difficult than frontside rotations because of the need to pass the handle on the first part of the spin. Again, you can spin backside, both heel side and toe side, and the rotation is signified by turning your back towards the wake. Toe side backside rotations are hard to spin because it's hard to create spinning momentum since you're already twisted. You have to put a lot more into the handle pull and they require more arm strength. For backside rotations, some riders pass the handle underneath their butts to help them get into the backside spinning position. Generally, riders will learn frontside rotations before backside rotations because of the handle pass. Remember, the key factor in determining whether the rotation is frontside or backside is whether you have to pass the handle to complete the first 180.
With so many different tricks, it's important to know the proper edging position that goes with each trick. Knowing the right edging position will not only help you pop the trick correctly, but also help you on the landing as well. We have a saying that goes, different positions for different tricks. So check out these 3 different edging positions and use them as starting points when trying a new trick.
As you learn a wide variety of tricks, you'll understand that there are more ideal positions for different tricks. The first position that we're going to talk about is the tall position. This position is pretty straight from the knees through to the shoulders and is used for doing big tricks in the load and release family. When you're in the tall position, you'll be able to create a lot of leverage on the line and you'll be able to edge very aggressively. Throughout this DVD series, you'll see edging position icons in the bottom corner of each chapter trick intro. Use this position as an approach starting point to help you pop and land tricks. There are many tricks to learn in wakeboarding, and knowing how each one works is a big part in becoming an advanced rider. These starting points are a huge chunk of the puzzle and will quicken the learning process, so use them to your advantage out on the water. The next position that we're going to talk about is the middle position. The difference between the tall position and the middle position is a little bend in your hips. The middle position is used usually when you're combining tricks that require either the tall or seated position. The combined trick needs a little bit of each position to function correctly. Your body is seated a little bit so you can use your legs at the wake. This position is ideal when you're doing flips where you need the leverage of the line to help you rotate, but you need your legs to help you go straight up so you can grab the board. Again, you'll see this icon at the beginning of each trick chapter intro throughout the series. The last edging position that we're going to talk about is the seated position. With this position, your legs are bent a lot more, so when you get to the wake, you can use them to go more straight up and get more height. With this position, the leverage on the line is decreased, and you won't edge as hard, but you'll be able to go a lot higher at the wake. With the decreased line tension, you'll be able to pull on the rope to rotate and grab the board a little bit easier. Once again, look for this position icon at the beginning of each intro so you have a starting point to help you land tricks. Along with the three edging positions are three types of edges used to help you pop and land tricks. These are techniques that will help you work less out on the water and have more control when you get to the wake. You'll understand how to harness the physics of the boat pulling you across the water and use it to your advantage. We have a motto here at the wakeboard camp, and it's less work, more control. And understanding this will help you pull, pass the handle, and flip tricks a lot easier. You'll need to use different edges for different tricks, and the first edge that we're going to talk about is the ollie edge or the no edge approach. This edge is a very slow edge that accelerates consistently as you approach the wake. You'll use this edge to work very little and keep the line tension low so you're able to pull on the handle, spin, and grab the board very easily. As a rider, if you edge out and then do nothing, the boat will eventually want to pull you back towards the middle. If you get in the right position and allow the boat to do this, all you have to do is sit there and then pop when you get to the wake. This gives you the very straight up pop and the decreased line tension to allow you to do grabs and spins. The next edge that we're going to talk about is the most common edge, the progressive edge. This is an edge that starts slow like the ollie edge, but increases very quickly at the wake. You'll be using this edge for most tricks in the load and release family, and for going big out in the flats. At the beginning of this approach, it's important to drift and start the edge very slowly so you can accelerate at the wake. If you start too fast, you'll decelerate and go flat at the wake, and you won't have the line tension needed to perform the trick. So be patient and let the boat do the first half of the edge while you edge aggressively on the second half. Doing flips without the wakes are a perfect example of how the progressive edge really works. It's a combination of edge, water pressure, and line tension that catapults you up into the air so you can rotate. You'll typically use this edge every time you're out on the water to jump the wakes. The last edge that we're going to talk about is the complete opposite of both of the previous edges. The trip flip edge starts really fast on the outside with a hard turn and then slows down and you switch edges at the wake. This gives you a tripping motion. You'll be using this edge for two families of flips, the tantrum family and the toe side front roll family. As you can see, you have to start very quick on your turn and then switch edges at the wake, so your body is tripped at the wake to initiate the rotation. After you edge out, wait for the line to get tight, then turn aggressively and edge hard towards the wake, then flatten off and then switch edges at the wake. Since this edge is very awkward and on the other side of the spectrum, you may want to practice it a few times by edging towards the wake, flattening off your edge, letting go with your back hand, and then popping into the middle.